Hey there, good morning everyone. I'm Errol Barnett in for Vladimir Duthier. Here in New York City, we're gathering news happening all around the world. China raises tariffs on U.S. goods. We'll take you live to the New York Stock Exchange to see how Wall Street is reacting to yet another escalation of President Trump's trade war. Plus, we're learning more about a deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River yesterday. It killed an entire family and the pilot. We'll bring you the latest from the scene. And the Supreme Court has ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the release of a man mistakenly deported to a Salvadorian prison. Why one justice said this case has implications for every U.S. citizen. CBS News 24/7 starts right now. So we begin this hour on Wall Street, where stocks, as you see right next to me, they're mixed. Traders are trying to plan around these changing tariff headlines. This morning, China raised its levies on U.S. goods to 125%. President Trump has tried to calm concerns about the market while pointing blame at other countries. Listen.
There'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end, it's going to be a beautiful thing. We're doing again what we should have done many years ago. We let it get out of control, and we allowed some countries to get very big and very rich at our expense.
CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady joins us now from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with more on this. Kelly, good morning to you. So we're mixed out of the gate. Just help us understand what's happening this morning where you are.
Okay, so look, I think the mood here is a little bit anxious. We have seen this week, it's been a very wild week of trading. We saw some of the best days. We saw a lot of volatility. Of course, last Friday, we saw a really bad day for the markets. And so I think the way that you just sort of described it as mixed is accurate. I have been watching the Dow and the other major indexes. They have been up and down today. The thing that I want to highlight of what's been happening this morning and that I'm focused on is we are hearing from three of the major banks, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, as well as Morgan Stanley. They all reported earnings. The past quarter to them looks good. The consumer is still holding up. Really, though, what I've been listening for on these question and answer sessions with the CEOs is their guidance. Two things I want to highlight for you there. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has had a little bit of a glum picture of the economy going forward because of the potential impact of these tariffs. He said on the call that he expects major public companies to cut their earnings guidance, cut their profit guidance, and that we're going to be in very much a wait and see perspective because businesses are just sort of holding off on planning because of all of this uncertainty. That word uncertainty, we're hearing it a lot. The other thing I want to highlight, Errol, kind of a little bit more dim picture. I actually just listened to BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, also reported earnings today. He said, this is according to him, we may already be in a recession and just not know it. So a lot of mixed feelings here today and just a lot of volatility in the trading, Errol.
Yeah, and as you've said so many times, and as we've reminded viewers, it's the uncertainty that investors don't like and that is not healthy for the economy. There's one other component I want you to help us understand, though, and that's I'm reading that a lot of investors are spooked by what's happening to U.S. bonds right now. The yields on them or the returns that you get for borrowing them are up. But why might that be a bad thing? U.S. Treasury bonds providing a bigger return?
Okay, so basically how this works is when you see yields on, let's say, the 10-year Treasury go up, that is government debt. If you're going to invest in a 10-year Treasury bond, you are buying government debt. And the yield is the interest rate that you receive every year on that bond for holding it. And so when yields go up, what that means is you need to incentivize investors to buy into that. They need a higher return in order to choose that versus putting their money somewhere else. They need to make it more attractive. Why this happens is a number of reasons. If inflation goes up, yields need to go up because you need to make sure that the return you are getting, let's say it's 4.5%, is higher than inflation. And if inflation goes up, that kind of squeezes the money that you are making by holding your money in that bond. And so why people are a little bit nervous about this is that when yields go up, it means that investors are need more incentive because they think inflation is going to go up. They think that the economy is going to see some bumpy times ahead. And traditionally, U.S. bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds, are a very safe place to put your money because you know that the government is going to pay their debts. You feel certain about the economy. And the fact that we have seen the bond market, I would say, have a little bit of a temper tantrum of late, Errol, is just an indication that investors don't feel as comfortable about the economy and where inflation is going in the U.S. at the current moment.
Yeah, and many other nations also hold U.S. bonds. So if they start to shed them and offload them, also not a good sign. Kelly O'Grady, live on the New York Stock Exchange floor with all those updates. Thank you, Kelly. Now, as we mentioned, China raised its retaliatory tariffs on the United States up to 125%. CBS News foreign correspondent Anna Corin explains that decision for us from Hong Kong.
China continues to be defiant in the face of even higher tariffs, describing U.S. actions as a joke, while raising the level of its own tariffs to 125%, effectively ending trade between the world's two largest economies. It comes after President Trump again increased tariffs on China to 145%, which prompted this response from China's Commerce Ministry. In a statement, it said, "The successive imposition of excessively high tariffs on China by the US has become nothing more than a numbers game with no real economic significance." It went on to say it merely further exposes the US practice of weaponizing tariffs as a tool of bullying and coercion, turning itself into a joke. It comes as President Xi made his first public comments on the escalating trade war on Friday, saying his nation is not afraid, while meeting with Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez in Beijing. He said, quote, "There are no winners in a trade war, and going against the world will only lead to self-isolation." Well, President Xi is heading to Southeast Asia next week, where he will no doubt be shoring up trade relationships in Vietnam, Cambodia and Malaysia, and reminding the global South that China is open for business and a reliable partner. Well, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi also weighed in on the economic decoupling, saying the US cannot act recklessly and the wheel of history cannot go backwards, end quote, in a trade war that threatens to upend global trade. Back to you.
All right, Anna, thank you for that. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us now for the White House with more on all of this. Good morning to you, Natalie. I know that when we spoke at 7 a.m. this morning, we had not yet heard a specific response from the White House to China raising its tariffs. Do we have any reaction by now, past 10 a.m.?
Yeah, hi, Errol. Good to be back with you. Well, the White House says that an official response to China's latest moves will be coming from the president himself, if it comes at all. We've been monitoring his social media, but I can tell you that Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, did speak to Fox News in an interview this morning. And when he was asked for his response to China's retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., he said it's not terribly surprising, but certainly unfortunate. We tried to then speak with Greer for ourselves. He wouldn't give us a comment with respect to China, but reporters pressed him on, are there any sort of talks or negotiations underway now between the United States and China? And he said, not at this point. We know President Trump has said that he is waiting for a call from China, from President Xi. And that he's open to negotiating. He says he wants to make a deal. He even says he has great respect for President Xi, but he still appears to be waiting for that call, Errol.
And separately, Natalie, we know that there's this 90-day pause on tariffs for every other nation in the world. And at the cabinet meeting with the president yesterday, we heard the administration basically say all these nations have now lined up and they have to figure out who to speak to first to schedule these things. But is there any tangible progress that the administration is reporting yet on these other trade deals with other nations now that this pause is in effect?
Yeah, and this morning the president did seem to comment on that on Truth Social, saying that his administration doing really well on tariff policy, saying things are moving along quickly. But yes, we've been pressing them on the details of these deals, which countries. Greer, in his earlier interview this morning, said that he's talking to Israel, Vietnam, said he would be speaking to Taiwan later today. We know that yesterday, economic advisor Kevin Hassett said that around 15 countries had come with explicit offers to the United States. Trade advisor Peter Navarro has also listed, India, Australia, the UK, EU, Japan, South Korea as places that will be coming in. But again, a flurry of negotiations when you think about the administration has just 3 months to try to make as many deals as possible. They've said that more than 70 countries have called them.
All right. Yeah, and that's why investors are so worried, because they've just kicked the can down the road. Natalie Brand with the latest at the White House. Thank you, Natalie. Have a great weekend. All right, we are expecting an update from the Justice Department at any moment now on this man. He was mistakenly deported from the U.S. to a supermax prison in El Salvador. Now, the Supreme Court recently ordered the administration to facilitate his return in a case that one justice warned could have implications for every single American. CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane has been tracking this and brings us the latest on this and some other big legal battles for the White House. Scott, good morning to you. Let's start at the top. What's the latest on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case at this hour?
Hey, Errol. Court hearings on the schedule for now in Greenbelt, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., for early afternoon for the judge to get her bearings on this case now that it's been handed back to her from the U.S. Supreme Court. The court has directed this lower court judge, Paula Sinis in Maryland, to come up with some clarification as to what the administration is to do to get Abrego Garcia out of that Salvadoran prison and back to the United States. The judge wanted arguments submitted this morning by the Department of Justice so that they could help inform this afternoon's hearing. And the Department of Justice has just replied saying they need some more time, that this is all new to them because the Supreme Court ruling came down last night. So we'll find out more if and when this hearing happens this afternoon about next steps. But there's a real theme in these rulings from the Supreme Court on issues of detention this week that's worth emphasizing, both in this unanimous ruling last night and one earlier this week that the administration could resume those Alien Enemies Act deportations. The Supreme Court was unambiguous on one key matter. There has to be due process. Anybody getting deported needs to be able to make a case before they are exited out of the country.
And I understand that is also the sentiment of Justice Sonia Sotomayor, because she was stark in her assessment of the Abrego Garcia case and what it could mean for every U.S. citizen. Help us understand why she's saying that.
That really is the overarching concern here, more than just one singular person or a group of people deported. It's what precedent would this set if somebody didn't check the administration and ensure due process? What Justice Sotomayor said is otherwise it would imply that the administration could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence, so long as it does so before a court can intervene. She's making a reference to those March 15th deportations to El Salvador that happened at the dark of night and that happened without due process. There is a growing concern among critics of the administration, Errol, that this is a pattern that could eventually lead or metastasize into deportations without due process for U.S. citizens, those innocent and falsely accused, and others for whom a deportation is a mistake, as it was in the case of Mr. Abrego Garcia.
And so, Scott, I want to ask you about another case, but it's along this theme. Mahmoud Khalil, he's due back in an immigration court today. This is after the government missed a deadline to turn over any evidence in his case yesterday, but they did submit something. Update us on what that is and what it isn't.
A different but growing matter involving deportations here. Mahmoud Khalil is a 30-year-old student at Columbia. His deportation, according to federal authorities, is because of his threat, the threat he poses due to his protests or participation in protests, according to the administration, in support of Hamas. A judge had ordered the administration to crystallize and clarify the reason for this deportation. It doesn't seem yet satisfied by what has been presented. So there's a hearing on the books in Louisiana where Khalil's being held today. Will he be deported? Will he be returned to New York? All of that's unclear, but here's what is clear, Errol. This is one of a growing number of students who've been picked up by federal agents in the past few days and weeks who are accused of being aligned with Hamas due to their participation in campus unrest or protests. What happens in the case of Khalil could inform the growing number of other cases as the days and weeks go on.
All right, we'll keep watching all of this. Scott McFarland, thank you, and we'll have more on this later this hour. All right, crews are scouring right now through the wreckage of a helicopter crash in the Hudson River. It cost 6 people their lives. Next, what we're learning about the victims and the ongoing investigation. This is CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. Dive operations resume today as experts search for major parts of this helicopter which crashed into the Hudson River. All 6 people on board died, including 3 children and their parents. The NTSB, that's the National Transportation Safety Board, is on the scene investigating what went wrong. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano is live from Manhattan, Lower Manhattan here in New York City to help us understand what the key questions are, Lilia, because there's so many unanswered questions. The key among them, how did this happen? But what do we know about this fateful flight from this family?
Well, Errol, what we know is that this was a tour. This was a leisure trip. This is a company that's a small business that has been operating for decades. This family was visiting New York as tourists from Spain. The father is a CEO of Siemens, the tech company, a telecommunications company. And the wife, his 3 children, ages 11, 5, and 4, all died, as well as the pilot. Their bodies were recovered shortly after that crash, which happened right back here. Witnesses said that they heard first a loud boom, and then after that they saw what seemed to be parts of the helicopter that were coming off. It seemed to have been breaking apart midair, and then of course crash here right after 3:15 in the afternoon. We are waiting to hear more details from the NTSB about the investigation. But the CEO of New York Helicopter, which is this company, issued a statement saying that he says, he doesn't know anything about what went down. The only thing I can tell you is we are devastated. He says his wife hasn't stopped crying, that they're a small company, that he's a father and grandfather, and that they're just devastated. CBS News talked to him, and he said also that they follow every rule, they follow all the rules and more. So we're really waiting for clues, but it's really hard to understand how it doesn't seem from the videos like there was any kind of collision. It's really hard to comprehend how this happened, but we are going to continue waiting for the NTSB and the other authorities involved in the investigation to get a clue as to whether or not this could have been prevented.
Yeah, and as we can even hear now, Lilia, this is usually a busy part of the city. Plenty of people take these helicopter tours of New York. And we do know that the helicopter was in the air for a while, touring the Hudson River before this incident, correct?
Yeah, just a few minutes. I mean, the helicopter took off at 2:59, so right before 3 p.m., and went down at 3:17 is when the 911 calls started coming in. But it was, pretty much just 15 minutes of the tour. It took off from the Skyport here in downtown Skyport. It went around a couple of times, and then, of course, when it was close to Hoboken on the other side of the river in New Jersey, that's when it fell down, and that's when witnesses captured what happened.
All right, we'll wait to hear more from the NTSB. Lilia Luciano with the latest. Thank you, Lilia. The cold and wet weather looks like it's here to stay for most of the East Coast this weekend. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Grant, great to see you again. Yesterday, you were telling me about a country of 2 seasons. Does it still look that way today?
Right. It's absolutely that way, if not even more so, Errol. It's crazy the contrast between the East Coast to the West Coast, where you've got not just rain and chilly temperatures, but you've got snow in the forecast, and I'll even double down even more on that. You've got accumulating snow in portions of the Northeast into New England. Otherwise, yes, a very wet East Coast with temperatures running well below normal. Temperatures in New York today are only around 49 degrees. Heavier rain moving in later on. Cooler temperatures funneling in behind it, though dry across the Midwestern states. And then you've got record-setting heat across the West, desert Southwest. Phoenix hit 100 degrees for the first time this year yesterday. We'll talk more about this accumulating snow coming up a bit, Errol. We're not talking about 1 or 2 inches, but maybe upwards of a half foot. More on that in just a bit. Back to you for now.
Okay, wow, that's a tease. Grant, thanks for that. We'll see you later this hour. All right, still to come for you all, Iran says it will give the U.S. a, quote, genuine chance ahead of tomorrow's planned nuclear talks. But what does that mean exactly? What to expect from these anticipated talks? This is CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. Here's a look at the big stories we're tracking for you right now. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is recommending additional measles vaccines for some domestic travel. Health officials tell CBS News this is in response to the growing outbreaks of the virus. The CDC recommends adults traveling to areas affected by outbreaks should get a second dose or 2 doses if you're not vaccinated. Infants should get an early first dose, and they say kids over 12 months should get an early second dose. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s family is trying to stop the release of files related to his 1968 assassination. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says documents related to both his assassination and that of Senator Robert F. Kennedy's will be released within the next few days. The civil rights group, founded and run by King, is asking for the court order requiring documents to be sealed for more than 50 years to remain in place. It claims President Trump doesn't have the authority to compel its release. We're also tracking this. Eric and Lyle Menendez could learn today if they have a chance at freedom after more than 30 years behind bars. This hinges on a Los Angeles judge's decision on if the pair should be resentenced for the murders of their parents. The brothers were convicted back in 1996 and sentenced to life in prison without parole. But in May 2023, their lawyer asked the court to vacate those convictions due to new evidence. Both sides will make their cases at today's hearing. And it is a busy morning for the Pentagon. That's diplomatic envoy Steve Witkoff is in Russia with hopes of reaching a peace deal in the war with Ukraine. And then Witkoff jumps over to Oman tomorrow to talk about Iran's nuclear program. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata is at the Pentagon for us, joins us now live to talk about this. Charlie, always great to see you. So President Trump's expressed a bit of frustration with President Putin over the last week or so. That's new. What can we expect from this in-person meeting in Russia today with Witkoff? And then we'll talk about Iran in a moment.
President Trump said he's peed off with Putin. He just tweeted, Russia's got to get moving. Too many people are dying. So just as it looked like they were gaining ground towards at least a temporary 30-day ceasefire, Putin kind of moved the goalposts. He made further demands. He's demanding the loosening of U.S. sanctions. At the same time, Russians have just been, we've been watching it, been bombarding Ukraine up and down the front line. And we get those reports from our colleagues in Ukraine as well. And again, he's calling into question not only Zelensky's legitimacy, but the government's legitimacy. So the question is, with Witkoff going to Russia, is he going with a stick or a carrot? Punish Putin with more further sanctions, or offer to loosen some of those up to maybe get him on board. Now, you mentioned Iran. We'll get to that in a sec, but I don't think it's any coincidence that Witkoff is visiting Russia on the eve of this meeting with Iran, right? Because Russia still has considerable influence, maybe the only country that does, over Iran. And their deputy foreign minister, the Russian deputy foreign minister, said, look, we can help in negotiations.
And I want to ask you about this angle, Charlie. The U.S. will not attend in person a meeting with the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Secretary Hegseth will be joining virtually. How does that piece of the puzzle help in the overall picture?
Well, first of all, Errol, I have to go back and say that it was Secretary Austin, right? Former Secretary of Defense, former Defense Secretary Austin, who actually set up that contact group in the first place. So this is something formed out of the United States military. So the fact that Hegseth is even attending virtually, as far as we know, that was only decided yesterday. So it's going to be co-hosted by Britain and Germany. In fact, talks are already underway. These are regular meetings, and they're meant to bolster military support for Ukraine. But considering Putin's stance, as we discussed, defense ministers have already said he's in no mood for peace. Actually, they said this morning, peace is out of reach. In practical terms, they've already announced $23 billion in military funding. Germany has pledged to provide air defense systems and Patriot missile systems. Those are very important to Ukraine. But the Trump administration and Hegseth himself, Secretary Hegseth, has been urging European allies to take the lead, and that's what we're seeing happening. But ultimately, Ukraine is going to need U.S. support if there is no end in sight for this conflict.
So that's interesting, Charlie, considering what's happening in Europe. You've got Witkoff in Russia, then he heads to Oman to talk about Iran. And meanwhile, the U.S. Senate confirmed a new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff just overnight. So what will be his first order of business, Lieutenant General Dan Kane, now in that post?
Errol, as you just pointed out, all of the above, right? I guess we also have to remember the United States is already in a shooting war against the Houthis. Unrelenting is how Secretary Hegseth continues to describe it. Then they face that immediate threat, the possibility of military action against Iran. And they are completely tooled up in that CENTCOM region. That's where Yemen and Iran are. 2 aircraft carriers, half a dozen destroyers, cruisers, F-16s, F-35s, B-2 stealth bombers. So I imagine that's going to be the most pressing priority right now. Then, of course, decisions to be made over the U.S. military presence in Europe and what to do about Ukraine. And then we can't forget about China, because as the trade war is ratcheting up, the tensions, military tensions between the United States and China are doing so as well. So the chairman's role is kind of 2 roles. He's there to gather information from the co-combatants. So these are the leaders of CENTCOM, EUCOM, et cetera, in a place called the Tank, put all that information together, and then advise the defense secretary and the president as far as what assets are available. Not so much in the policy discussions, but to give them the information. So he is going to have to hit the ground running.
He'll have a nice, quiet first day, and his phone won't ring over the weekend like yours.
I know the feeling. Right.
Great to chat with you. Thanks for the insight, Charlie. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Errol.
All right, Ksenia Karolina, a dual U.S.-Russian citizen, is waking up on American soil this morning. She was just released by Russia yesterday as part of a prisoner swap between Moscow and Washington. Karolina was convicted of treason and sentenced to prison by a Russian court over a $51 donation she made to a humanitarian group helping people impacted by the war in Ukraine. Now, Karolina touched down at Joint Base Andrews late last night. You're looking at this emotional footage. Next, she heads to San Antonio, Texas, where there's a program that helps people who are wrongfully detained. The House has adopted the GOP budget plan, paving the way for the Trump administration's agenda. This happened yesterday. The bill passed by a narrow margin, too, 216 to 214, after Republican leaders worked to win over GOP holdouts who wanted even deeper spending cuts, as we reported yesterday. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins us now from Capitol Hill with more on this. All right, CHB, you said this was the framework. They had to get past this stage first, and now the real work begins. So what's next?
Yeah, thanks to you and our conversation yesterday. Hopefully we've conditioned our viewers to know that nothing is law yet. So now the real work begins. And what's significant about what passed yesterday is that it says that they want to cut at least $1.5 trillion from federal government spending. And as we've been talking about, that money has to come from somewhere. And what's specific in this framework is that it asks the Energy and Commerce Committee to cut $800 billion. What's significant about that committee? That committee has jurisdiction over programs like Medicaid. So House leaders, Senate leaders on the Republican side have said, we're not trying to cut entitlement programs. We're not cutting Medicaid benefits. We just want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. There's a math problem, though. That's a lot of money, and it's not clear that all of that is waste, fraud, and abuse. So we'll be watching to see as they craft that policy. But notably, Errol, what this means is that Congress now can start crafting real legislation regarding the president's agenda. And one key item of that agenda, which will be notable for our viewers, is that they want to extend the Trump tax cuts that were put in place in 2017 and expire at the end of this year. They want to make that permanent. Take a listen to what Speaker Johnson said they're getting out of this bill.
The big components of the One Big Beautiful Bill is to ensure that we don't have the largest tax increase in U.S. history all at once, which is what would happen at the end of this year if we didn't accomplish this mission.
So we'll see how this all goes. It's going to be a while, Errol, before any of this gets crafted into law and then voted on. And if yesterday was any indication how narrow that vote was, I mean, that was the easy part. Getting this conference to agree on serious policy is going to be a big uphill climb. But as we're talking about the markets, as we're talking about the trade war now with China and potentially others, Republicans up here on Capitol Hill have been arguing that extending those tax cuts could provide more certainty to the market. So that's how they're kind of working through all this.
All right, that would be appreciated, but we don't know if it will ever arrive. Caitlin Huey-Burns, great to see you. Thanks for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead for you all. Our own Gayle King is talking about her upcoming trip to space. Next, we're looking at growing space tourism and how it could soon lead to more of us having our own out-of-this-world experience. Really? That's what's coming up next on CBS News 24/7. So right now, our own Gayle King is preparing to board a rocket to space. She takes off Monday. Ahead of her journey, she spoke about the crucial support she's receiving right now from her 2 children and her best friend, Oprah Winfrey. She also spoke about her mindset leading up to launch day.
I'll be ready Monday morning, I promise. I will be ready Monday morning, but I still have a ways to go before I'm like, okay, put me in, coach, let's go.
So you're still processing?
I'm still processing. Yeah, very much so. I have a meditation coach that's been coming to my house. You know, I have a mantra. I tried it years ago, but my brain is just all over the place. It's very hard. Glad this may surprise you, but it's very hard to quiet my brain.
Let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Mark Strassman, who also spoke with Gayle this morning about this awesome adventure. Mark, how is this Blue Origin flight expected to take off? What will the mission be? And what will Gayle and her female friends up there see?
Hey, Errol. You know, if the weather is good on Monday, and it certainly looks good from here in the forecast, I think Blue Origin expects everything to go great. There are going to be 6 women on this crew that's heading up. They're going to go up 62 miles to the edge of space before they come back down. They'll have about 4 minutes of weightlessness, and they're going to have a spectacular view, obviously, of the curvature of the Earth. And then they're going to come straight down. And the total trip time from start to finish is only about 11 minutes. It's really a drive-by, or a flyby to space. But it's changed a lot of people, just that quick trip. This world of space tourism is unlike any other experience available to civilians, and Gayle is just the latest one who's going to get that experience.
And I know that you've interviewed people who've gone up and spent those 11 minutes and come back. There is actually, and including for professional astronauts too, a psychological effect from seeing the Earth's curvature from space. What is that, and what should people expect when they go up there for 11 minutes and they see Earth out the window?
Yeah, time and time again, the people who've gone up have talked about the overview effect of seeing the curvature of the Earth, how thin the Earth's atmosphere is, how fragile the planet looks. I mean, I'll give you an example. Vanessa O'Brien, who flew a couple of years ago, talked to us about that very thing. Here's what she had to say about her experience going up in the same kind of capsule that Gayle's going up in on Monday.
You are able to see something that is so precious. It was seeing that blue marble from above. And it translates into a sense of almost responsibility and an appreciation that we really are all connected, that it is one planet.
And she's just somebody who, she's a mountaineer, adventurer, and an entrepreneur, and she went up as a private person because in this world of space tourism that is possible, and she was changed by it. And again, Errol, I've heard that time and time again from both professional astronauts and civilian astronauts that it is a life-changing view.
Yeah, no joke, Mark. I get that feeling on a plane looking out the window. You know, Earthlings look like ants down there, and we get to fly and yada, yada. I would love being in space. Thanks for that, Mark. Great to chat with you. We'll all tune in on Monday. Folks can watch Gail's trip to space on Blue Origin in a special hour of CBS Mornings. That begins at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific on Monday. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a look at the forecast that Gail can expect. Grant, you get to see the world from above with that cool studio and your job. What will things look like on Monday?
Yep. I'll tell you, Errol, look, you know, we get to view it from the vantage point of a satellite, but I can't imagine what Gail is going to get to see. I really can't wait for this on Monday. I can't wait to hear how Gail describes her experience as she goes all the way up to the edge of space. No doubt it's going to be life-changing. I can't wait for it. Forecast looks pretty good, guys. Looking at partly cloudy skies out there near Van Horn. The launch site's about 30 miles or so north of Van Horn, Texas. Temperatures will be in the mid-60s right there as the sun rises. Launch is going to be Central Time, okay? So 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 East Coast time. Temperatures near 66 degrees under those partly cloudy skies as she launches all the way through the Earth's atmosphere right to the edge of space, and then safely will return back down. Here's what the forecast satellite and radar looks like for Monday morning. Temperatures climbing into the mid-80s later Monday afternoon, but we'll see some cloud cover build in. But again, in the morning for the launch for Gail as she goes to space, temperatures will be in the mid and upper 60s. It will be a beautiful day, no doubt. Let me show you what's going on across the East Coast right now. A lot of rain moving in, and that's not the concern for folks across the central and southwestern United States. We'll put on the radar and show you it's a mess of cold rain there through the mid-Atlantic, even some snow up to the north and east. I'll show you the forecast for those snow totals here in just a second because it is a non-spring-like start to the weekend. Have a look at this forecast because it all is rain through much of the East Coast, but as you get up into New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, even portions of, well, the Poconos Mountains could even see a little bit of this snow as we go through the first half of the weekend. That storm system will clear up to the north and east as another storm system moves in from the Great Lakes as we go into early next week. How much snow are we talking about? Well, it's crazy that we're talking about snow to begin with. I mean, it is the middle of April, right? Mount Pocono could see, I think that's a little bit of a high number, but upwards of maybe a half foot of snow, probably more on the order of about 3 or 4. But you're still talking about accumulating snow over portions of the Northeast. The rest of the country, well, at least west of the Rockies, it is warm, if not downright hot. Phoenix today climbing up to near 101 degrees. They'll see temperatures cool off a bit, but it's cold, rainy in the east, and unseasonably hot over the west. Several places today looking at record high temperatures. Phoenix is one of them. Tucson probably looking at a near record high temperature. Vegas going for a high today of 97 degrees. The record today in Vegas is 93. They blow that out of the water later this afternoon. Errol, back to you.
Very surprised to hear that, Grant. We'll see you one more time this hour. Thanks very much. The Masters are in full swing down in Augusta. Next, I'll speak with CBS sports analyst and a former PGA Tour member about day one and what's ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, folks, day two of the Masters is officially underway. Justin Rose is leading the pack, and defending champion Scottie Scheffler is tied for second with 2 others. There are also some household names working hard to make the cut, but there'll be something different on the back nine of the Masters this year. That brings us to CBS Sports analyst Frank Nobilo. He's live at Augusta National for us this morning. Frank, great to see you, and congrats on this wonderful write-up in The Athletic for the New York Times from yesterday, folks can read, because this is not your first Masters, but you'll have a different vantage point this year. So how does it feel for you, and what does it mean to be calling the action from the 16th hole?
Errol, it's quite incredible because I've always been a great fan of Vern. Vern Lundquist, that is. And he was a confident, an ally, he was a mentor, all in one. And I miss him, for example, this week in the green room. I know he's watching so many times, even yesterday, I wanted to thank him on the air because you just reminded here, when you do the Masters for 40 years, your name is just imprinted. But it's not just his name, it's his voice. And all these great calls, you know, Jack Nicklaus is on property. 1986, it's so simple, and yet it is the exclamation mark to Jack Nicklaus's 6th and final Masters. Tiger Woods 20 years ago, it's the anniversary of the phenomenal chip on 16, but the call, I just think it's a broadcasting masterpiece, Errol, I really do. The pacing, the timing. Vern always had this way of allowing you into like a birthday party and let you enjoy the cake and even take the presents home. It's just the warmth. I think he's irreplaceable, I really do. But I'm honoured just to be able to be in the same perch.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to have you at that point of the course, and we know that you look at this as not just a broadcaster but a former player, and the course is challenging. So how is it playing this week?
Well, it's changed a lot. It's typical Augusta, you know, with the storm that came through last year. You know, the area is recovering, so it needs a great Masters, and I think we're on the precipice of one. And just to throw a little curveball, and we had a lot of rain on Monday, so that means this course is going to be very changeable. Course started to dry out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then for the opening round, we saw a little bit of everything. We saw the mistakes made because the greens were firmer than some of the players expected. I'm pointing out Rory McIlroy here at 15, and also they were ferociously fast. So if you got on the wrong side, you really didn't just drop a shot. You're potentially dropping 2 or 3 shots, and that happened on the same hole. Patrick Cantlay made 8, Rory McIlroy made 7 on 15, the reachable par 5. So there's lots of traps out there, that's for sure. I don't think the course will get any easier as the days sort of progress. We might even get a little bit more rain this afternoon. So it's going to be changeable. It's going to be all about adaptation.
And you've mentioned some of the challenges. There are some opportunities, though, as well. I'm wondering who are some of your favorites at this stage who you think are kind of having a strong showing.
Well, we have 26 countries this year that are represented. That's a record. So we have an Englishman on top, and Justin Rose now, who's had more leads than anyone else here of players that have yet to win the Masters Championship. It's not the first time he's been in front. But really, you've only got to go back one player to find the favourite, and that's Scotty Scheffler. That's the target that's really going to affect today, Friday, because I think if you're even par, 73, 74, today's not just a day about surviving the cut. You're going to have to make up ground. But, Errol, as every Master, there's always great stories. We have 5 amateurs. They're trying to win a silver cup. And then there's some players, for example, like Bernard Langer, who's playing in his last Masters. Or, for example, I think one of the best stories of the week is none other than someone with the same colour hair as me, and that's Fred Couples, 65, young and strong, and really looks like he has a phenomenal chance of playing the weekend.
Well, there are some great players and awesome folks literally calling the shots like you, Frank. Congrats on the new perch. And I guess we have an open invite to your party that you'll be calling now as we watch the Masters. Great to chat with you.
Likewise.
CBS Sports' expanded live weekend coverage of the Masters will feature the debut of 5 additional hours of the 3rd and final round coverage, beginning Saturday and Sunday at noon Eastern on Paramount Plus and continuing at 2 p.m. Eastern on CBS and Paramount Plus. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with a last look at the national forecast. Grant, how do things look for golf and everything else?
Oh, my gosh. You heard him mention it there. Maybe a stray isolated shower today, but the forecast looks magnificent all the way through the weekend. Plenty of sunshine through the afternoon. Temperatures near 70 today, 68 tomorrow. So a little cooler tomorrow, but still, you're looking at mostly sunny skies. Temperatures near room temperature Sunday afternoon, 73 under mostly sunny conditions. It will be a gorgeous weekend at the Masters there in Augusta. Rain across the East Coast, though, for now. That clears Georgia as we go through the day today. Cooler temperatures on the back. It's still hot out west. Errol, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you for that. Enjoy your weekend. We've got some breaking news into our newsroom right now. Police say a small plane has crashed in Boca Raton, Florida. This was arriving at the Boca Raton airport. You're looking at a message from the local police department and a tweet asking drivers to avoid the area because roads there are now closed. We'll bring you more information on this on CBS News 24/7 throughout the day. That does it for me. I'll see you Monday at 7 a.m. for the CBS Morning News. Please do enjoy your weekend, but stay where you are first. Reed Cowan is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news from coast to coast next. This is CBS News 24/7.